So presentation skill requires some basic things, and you have to consider these things if you want to make your presentations successful. As I have already told you that online presentation is getting very popular nowadays. So why? Because we are living with busy schedule. Our days are getting hectic. And we are living with lots of things. So it is really difficult to synchronize all these things. Or it's also difficult to align your time with your task and your task with the schedule provided by the host who has invited you to deliver a speech abroad. Suppose you are invited to deliver a speech in Australia, but you are not given an air ticket. For example, you don't want to spend such a huge amount for air ticket. Then how can you serve the purpose of your host and your purpose also? So you can make online presentation. Ten years ago, seminar was usually held offline, that is inside, or in campus seminar, in the campus of university, in the campus of colleges, in the campus of educational institutions, seminars were held. And all the presenters, the speakers, used to remain present in the venue. But nowadays, just think of the conditions after the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the world, especially in relation to the use of internet in the pedagogy, in teaching and learning process. Just if you focus on this particular section, you will find how online presentation is becoming immensely popular. So 10 years ago, a seminar required the physical presence of all the participants, the speakers, the presenters. But now, in post-COVID-19 situations, we find how webinar is becoming more and more popular. Webinar. Webinar means seminar online. Okay, using internet network, we can arrange a seminar. So online platform can be used for seminar, and that very seminar is called webinar. This very term is also getting popular nowadays, and it was very, very commonly and widely used during the COVID-19 pandemic, because that very COVID was infectious and physical contact was prohibited at that time. So gathering of many people in a particular venue could have been very hazardous for everybody present in the seminar. So during that very time, webinar took the place of seminar. And now pandemic is over, but webinar is still sustaining its popularity. And I think you know the reasons behind its ever-expanding popularity. Now let me discuss some important aspects of engaging presentations. And I will also tell you how you can make your presentation engaging and what rubrics you would use to make your presentations engaging. So I think you can now see some texts on the screen. And for your sake, I like to zoom these texts for your sake. Just let's read these sentences. Giving presentation is often feared by many professionals, but if the presentation is online and you are not a native speaker, things get even trickier. One tip to make things easier: learn useful phrases to help you navigate your presentation. Listen to the episode above. Download the checklist below. So you will find the checklist below. And learn from the phrases we present. So at first, I like to acknowledge my debt to Google, that is from the websites I have collected these texts. And I think these texts may help you. You can also innovate, add some new points. So that is up to you. And I hope you can do it. You have the capacity to do it. So general vocabulary for presentation. You know, vocabulary is essential. If you do not use, or if you cannot use diverse words in diverse situations, then your presentation may grow boring. So vocabulary is essential. And sometimes some smallest changes in your presentation can make the biggest differences. So one of them is to learn a few phrases that give you confidence during your presentation. Okay. So anyway, in the first phase, I will tell you about some steps that you may follow during your presentation to make your presentation effective. For example, at the very inception of your presentation, you may share the outline of your topic. That is, the things that you are going to share with your audience are to be outlined at the very inception or starting of your presentation. And if your audience does not know what you are going to present, then the audience may lose their interest in your presentation. So at first you have to share the highlights of presentation. Then to clarify, that is, you have to make your points clear. in presence of your audience. You have to clearly declare what you are going to present. Actually, these things are essential for making your presentation engaging. And then highlight. You have to highlight. Highlight means declare or share or show or demonstrate what you are going to present. Then put emphasis. You have to put emphasis on what you are going to present. Suppose you are going to share some information about global warming. All the informations may not be equally important. So you have to know which one is most important. You have to know which one is more important, which one is important, which one is less important, which one is not important at all. So you have to know how to classify categories of informations. And then you must maintain diverse techniques of putting emphasis on the points that you are going to share with your audience. And then the next point, to walk you through, that is very common in business presentations. To walk you, that is, you have to walk through your audience and communicate with your audience. To send around, to carry on, that is, you have to continue your presentation. You must not stammer in the middle of presentation. You must not show that you are confused about what you are telling them. So you should not show any sort of confusion or nervousness during presentation. And you have to have some words to carry away and carry on your presentation. And when you feel that your presentation is getting stagnant, then you should use some magnetic words that will navigate your presentation ahead. And ultimately, you have to summarize your presentation. You have to summarize. Okay. So just think of all these things. Just think of all these things, that how presentation is to be made successful. Last of all, suppose you are concluding. You have summarized your presentation. But you must not forget to focus on the key points or key argument or key information of your presentation. So you must not lose focus. And you must not let your audience lose their focus. Actually, these are the technical aspects that a presenter must follow. Okay. And every good presenter, if you think of Jack Ma, if you think of Barack Obama, if you think of Noah Harari, or Steve Jobs is dead now, but if you visit the YouTube channel and listen to his recorded speech addressing different audiences at different places, irrespective from a business institution to the educational institution, you will find how Steve Jobs how successfully Steve Jobs addresses the audience and makes his presentation. So anyway, now come to this very particular step. Vocabulary to start your presentation. Learn how to powerfully start your presentation with these 4 simple steps. Here are some vocabulary you can use. As I have already told you that vocabulary is essential. The use of words is very important. And every word has got its meaning, connotation, connotative meaning. And meanings are imposed from outside upon the word. Meanings are also sometimes created by the presenter with a specific posture and gesture. The same word that you use and I use may have different meanings with you and with me. My meaning may be different from your meaning of the same word. So how? We can make this difference by adding some specific gestures and postures to that very word, to the pronunciation of that very word. So use of specific words with a specific posture and gesture is very important to create an environment during presentation. Now, how will you welcome your audience? Suppose you are starting your presentation. So how will you start? You now find some vocabularies here. For example, good morning. If it is mornings, then you will start your presentation with good morning. If it's afternoon, you may start your presentation with good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So one thing that I like to remind you, that during presentation, you must not give your audience any vibe that you are a racist. You must not be a racist. In your audience, you may have Muslims, you may have Hindus, you may have Buddhists, you may have Christians, Christian audience, or Muslim audience, Hindu audience, or Buddhist audience. You may find during your presentation in the gathering. Some may be Muslims, some may be Hindus, some may be Buddhists, some may be Christians, or some may from other religions. And suppose you, a presenter, is a Muslim, or is a Hindu, or is a Buddhist. You must not impose your ideology, religious ideologies, especially, upon your audience. Your audience may not accept it. Remember. So suppose you are a Muslim, but all your audience, all the listeners are Hindus. So you must have respect for their religious ideology also. You must not give them any gesture that you are superior to them and your religious ideology is superior to that of them. And so you just impose your specific vocabulary, which is affiliated by your religion. So you cannot impose the specific vocabulary upon your audience. Okay, you may start your presentation with a vocabulary which is not racial. You may exchange salam with them, and at the same time, you may also exchange good morning or good evening or good afternoon with them. You may also exchange adab or namaskar with them. Just as a presenter, you should have your discretion to be very much liberal, to be tolerable, to be flexible to your audience. So, in this respect, the role of vocabulary is very crucial. So, you have to pick up some specific words to address your audience in such a way that they would not consider you a racist. They would think that, oh, this man is liberal. You may be a Hindu, your audience may be a Christian, maybe Christian. Or you may be Muslim, your audience may be Buddhist. No problem. You will follow your religion. They will also follow their religion. No problem. But you must not show any sort of gesture that you are a racist. If you give this gesture during your presentation to your audience, your presentation must fail because your audience will not listen to you. And they would think of you in a different way. You may be a scholar, but if a scholar is a racist, then the people will not listen to this scholar. Okay, so just think vocabulary is very, very, very important thing. It's a serious aspect of presentation. So during presentation, you have to choose appropriate words, appropriate vocabulary. Otherwise, your presentation may go astray. So you will find some tips here. For example, you may start your presentation with this expression, for example, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to today's webinar. Or you may start your webinar or you may start your presentation with this vocabulary. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be speaking with you today. So just think, these expressions do not have any racial gesture. These words are very much universal. These words or these phrases can create a democratic environment in the auditorium in which you are speaking. You may also address your audience online during a webinar, no problem. But you have to create an environment that will be congenial to your audience. You must not give a vibe to them that you are racially superior and they are inferior, or they are superior, you are inferior. So this very issue must not come during presentation, and it must not hamper you and your presentation. And the next step that you have to follow during your presentation is to introduce yourself. Introduction is very important. You have to introduce yourself to your audience. The audience must know who you are. Sometimes during seminar or conference or webinar, we find that the moderator usually introduces the speaker. So I think you know this decorum. Suppose you are a conference speaker or you are a convocation speaker. You know convocation? On last 17th February, Green University organized its 5th convocation. And many dignified personalities came to join our convocation. We had convocation speaker. So just think of the convocation speaker. Convocation speaker does not introduce himself during his presentation or during his speech. Rather, the moderator of the function introduces him. He presents a short biography of that very dignitary. And after the brief biography, which was read out by the moderator of the program, the convocation speaker starts his speech very successfully. He did not introduce himself as he was introduced by the moderator of the program. Okay. But suppose you are a teacher. You are meeting your students for the first time. It's your first class with your first year student or first semester students. So there is no moderator in your classroom to introduce you. So you have to introduce yourself. Now, how will you introduce? What is the most effective way of introducing oneself? You may want to know. Now, this is the way. There are some ways of presenting or introducing oneself during presentation. For example, the first one, my name is Susan, and I am part of the design team here at the Globex Corporation. So Susan is addressing an audience in a multinational company. She's addressing. So she introduces herself in a straightforward way. My name is Susan, and I am part of the design team here at Globex Corporation. So just think how generously she introduces herself. I am part of the design team. So how she declares her belonging. She belongs to Globex Corporation. She is a member of this corporation family. She is an employee of this Globex Corporation. So you will get lots of ideas from only these few words about Susan. So just think of the effective ways of introduction. Now, the next way of introducing yourself during a presentation. Next way. First of all, a little bit about my background. I am the team lead at then you will have to mention the name of your company. And I have been in charge of that is what is your responsibility. You have to mention here. For how many years? Suppose you were serving the company for 10 years, so you have to mention here 10 years. So just think, very important pieces of information are given here in the introductory vocabulary. That is, first of all, a little bit about my background. I am the team lead at, for example, at multinational company. I have been in charge of maintaining communication with my consumers for 10 years, of course, 12 years, of course, 20 years, etc., etc. So a bunch of information is given through this very introductory vocabulary. Now come to the next way of introducing yourself. I would like to tell you a bit about myself. My name is Eve. I am the operations manager here at for example, at Jamuna Group or at US Bangla Group, etc., etc. Okay. So I think you have got these three ways of introducing yourself. Now, I like to ask you, of these three options, or of these three ways of introducing yourself, which one will you choose? Or which one is the best one? If I want to know the answer to this question from Mahi Alam. Mahi Alam, do you hear me? Okay, then what about Sohana Rashid? Sohana.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you please tell me, you find here three ways of introducing yourself in presence of your audience. So
Yes, sir.
which one is the best one to you, according to you? Which one will
Sir,
you choose during
second
your
one.
Okay, you can't answer. I think all these three ways of introducing yourself in presence of your audience are very good, and you may choose either of these three, that is one of these three. Now come to the next page. It's also very crucial. This very page is known as introduce the topic and goal of presentation. As I have already told you, towards the inception of our today's class, I told you that what you are going to present or what is the topic of your presentation is to be declared at the very beginning of your presentation. Otherwise, it will leave your audience confused. Now, how will you introduce your topic? It's a question. Or what vocabulary will you use for introducing your topic? So just think of these tips. Today, I would like to talk about. So in this way, you can start to introduce your topic. Today, I would like to talk about, etc. Or you may start in this way. This presentation will take about 50 minutes or 40 minutes or 30 minutes, etc., etc. And we will discuss we will discuss, for example, we will discuss different issues about global warming. We will discuss different issues about ecological imbalance. We will discuss different aspects of the pollution of our rivers. So in this way, you can introduce the topic. You may also introduce the topic in this way, that if we have allocated 50 minutes to this presentation, and I will talk about, for example, gender discrimination. I will talk about, for example, gender discrimination. Just think of a topic. Or you may also start in this way. I would like to give you a brief breakdown of breakdown of career building issues, okay, or etc. You may consider, or you may start your introduction of the topic in this way. I would like to take the opportunity to talk about, for example, to talk about traffic jam in Dhaka City. Traffic jam in Dhaka City, okay? All right. Or you may start your introduction of your topic in this way. The main goal of this presentation is ... That is, what is your main purpose of presentation? For example, your purpose of presentation is to make your audience aware of environmental pollution. So mention that very topic at the very inception of your presentation. And then another important way of introducing your topic. The purpose of this presentation is ... Suppose you are speaking about the importance of learning English. So you may start your presentation in this way. The purpose of this presentation is to make our audience aware of the importance of English language. Or you may also start your presentation with this vocabulary. My objective today is, for example, my objective today is to share some issues about racism. Okay, in this way, just choose a topic and think of it, and you will learn how to introduce your topic in presence of your audience. So I think you have got some points here. And all these points are telling you some necessary things. And these things are essential. And these things are closely related to the success of your presentation. If you want to present in presence of audience successfully, at first you have to introduce yourself, and you have learned some ways of introducing your own self. And then you have to introduce the topic and the goal of the presentation, and how it will introduce yourself, and how it will introduce the topic of your presentation and the objective of your presentation. all these things are mentioned here, we have already learned. So I do request you to read all these informations very carefully and use your discretion and try to choose the best one. I think all these tips are very essential. You can choose any one from all these tips, all these rules and rubrics. So I do request you to read all these things very closely. Now come to the next one. This is another page of your presentation. Another page which can make you successful. Addressing questions from the audience. So how will you address the questions from the audience? Suppose you have finished your presentation. At the end of your presentation, the audience questions you. Now, how will you handle their questions? Will you be angry with them? Or will you humbly address their questions? So these are very important questions. Now I like to draw your attention to this. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to interrupt. So it's a very polite way of entertaining questions from your audience. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to interrupt. Or you may also use this very sentence for entertaining questions from your audience. If anything is not clear, please click on the raise hand button. Raise hand button that is during webinar. And I will do my best to answer your questions. It's also a very humble way of addressing questions or entertaining questions from your audience. You can also use this vocabulary. I would be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. You may think that if the questions come from your audience in the middle of your presentation, then the questions might hamper your presentation. So very politely, you should draw the attention of your audience and say, I would be happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Or you may address this issue in this way. If you have any questions, please kindly wait until the end to ask them. We will have, for example, 10 minutes or 15 minutes for our question and answer session at the end. Usually, during a presentation, we have a question answer session. And that very session usually comes at the end. So I think this very expression is more appropriate now. That is, if you have any questions, please kindly wait until the end to ask them. We will have 10 minutes for our question answer session at the end. Or you may, especially during online presentation, you may use this very expression. this very expression. Since today's audience is considerably large, we will not have time for questions, but please email me at email at the address, etc., etc. That is, you have to put your email address there. So if you find that the audience is huge, suppose 400 or 500 audience are there, or 300 audience are there in online during your webinar, and questions from 50 persons come, it's a huge number, and it is humanly impossible to answer to all these questions during a webinar. It may take hours, but we don't have hours at our hand for presentations. We have only minutes. So if you find the huge quantity of questions, a huge number of questions on the part of your audience, then you have to use this vocabulary. That is, since today's audience is considerably large, we will not have time for questions, but please email me at that is, you have to put your email address there. So we have learned by this time how to address questions from audience, how to introduce the topic and goal or objective of the presentation, and how to introduce yourself in presence of your audience. These are the three important topics we learned today. Now I like to draw your attention to another topic. This is the last topic of our today's discussion. Clear out technical issues. Suppose you have started your online presentation or webinar, but there are some technical problems and your audience can't hear you. Then how would you expect their cooperation during your presentation? If you clarify the technical issues at the very inception of your presentation, then your audience will cooperate you. Okay. Your audience may cooperate here. So clear out technical issues. Number one, can everyone hear me well? So at the very inception, you will ask, after introducing yourself, or before all these introductory ceremonies, you may clarify the technical issues. You will say, can everyone hear me well? Let me know if you encounter any technical difficulties throughout the presentation. Okay. Or if you are not speaking, please put yourselves on mute. Suppose you are speaking and your audience is also speaking, and there would be a kind of chaotic situation. The other listeners will not listen to you clearly. So you would humbly request your audience to mute their microphone. Or the third way of clarification of technical issues. If you feel that the sound quality is poor throughout the presentation, please let me know. So just think of the use of please, think of the use of sorry, think of the use of other polite expressions. If you are a presenter, you must be polite. You must be humble. You must be respectful to your audience. And if you can maintain these things, your presentation must draw the attention of your audience. So presentation requires some rules, and a presenter is to follow some rules and rubrics to make his presentation successful. So I think we have got some ideas about some important issues today. And now I like to listen to you. Now we have question answer session, and then I will give you attendance. Now, do you have any question regarding all these things? The vocabulary of presentations today, that is how to introduce yourself, how to welcome your audience, how to introduce the topic and goal of your presentation, and then how to address the questions from your audience. Now, you may please let me know your feedback.